It was a crisp, wind-chilled afternoon in downtown Chicago when my phone rang. I was wrapping up a contract review with a client at the firm when the unfamiliar number popped up on my screen, area code 872, local. I hesitated for a beat. Something about it felt off. Still, I picked up. "This is Emma Carter," I answered, professional tone on autopilot. The voice on the other end was calm but formal. "Ms. Carter, this is Brad Coleman from Horizon First Bank. I need to verify some information with you regarding a mortgage application for a property at 720 Glenwood Drive." I blinked. "I'm sorry, you must have the wrong person. I don't own any property on Glenwood Drive." There was a pause. "I understand your surprise," he said, his voice dipping just slightly. "But your name is listed as a co-signer on a mortgage that was approved 7 months ago. The primary applicant is Madison Carter. Your sister." The pen slipped from my hand. "That's impossible," I said, barely able to process the words. "All documents are signed," Brad continued, "and the loan is currently over 2 months past due. The balance sits at just under $178,000. Additionally, your name appears on 3 related credit lines." I stood up, heart thundering, my mind racing through every recent family encounter, Christmas dinner, when Mom had gone unusually quiet every time Madison's new house came up. Dad had kept changing the subject. That night at his birthday party, those forms Mom handed me, casually saying, "It's just insurance renewal. Just sign the bottom." I hadn't read them. "I need copies of every document," I said, my voice cold and controlled. "They're already in your inbox," Brad replied. "But there's something else you should know." I hung up. My fingers were trembling as I opened my email. There it was. A PDF attachment, labeled Mortgage, Glenwood. I clicked. The signature on the final page, it wasn't just similar to mine. It was mine. Or at least a perfect imitation. Even the subtle loop I used at the end of the A in Emma, copied with surgical precision. But it wasn't my signature. It couldn't be. I never signed this. I couldn't breathe. I called Alex. My best friend since college. A civil attorney. The only person I could call without sounding completely insane. "They forged my signature," I said when he picked up. "Madison. My parents. All of them." "I'm coming over," he said without hesitation. 15 minutes. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur. I paced the office, my pulse high and irregular, like my body was bracing for an impact that had already happened. When Alex arrived, I didn't even greet him. I just opened the PDF. He studied it quietly. "They didn't even try to make it look different," he said after a minute, pointing at the signature. "This is a felony, Emma." I nodded, numb. "And it gets worse," I said, turning my laptop so he could see the screen. "They brought the forms to the bank themselves. Brad said they submitted everything in person." Alex leaned back, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "Do you want to press charges?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But I need the truth. All of it." Before I could even process the next steps, my phone rang again. It was Mom. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reject button. "Answer it," Alex said. "Try to stay calm." I took a deep breath and accepted the call. "Hi, Mom." "Sweetheart," she said, too bright, too fake. "Are you free tonight? Your dad's making your favorite, spaghetti and meatballs." I almost laughed at the irony. "That's perfect. I need to talk to you. I just got a very interesting call from Horizon Bank." There was silence. A long, weighted pause. I was going to tell you," she stammered. "Really? It's just, Madison needed help. And you're doing so well, Emma. So your solution was to forge my signature. Risk my law license. My job." "You're overreacting," she said quickly. "We're family. Families help each other." "No," I said, my voice like ice. "You helped Madison. You used me. She'll pay it back. She just needs a little time." I stared at the screen, at the overdue notices from the mortgage account. "I'm coming over tonight," I said. "Madison better be there." I hung up. Alex looked at me. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I'm done being lied to." Something inside me shifted then. Not fear. Not sadness. Something heavier. Stronger. Resolve. They wanted to use my success as a shield for their failures. Fine. But they were about to learn what it felt like to weaponize a lawyer. And this time, I wasn't just going to listen. I was going to fight. By the time I reached my apartment later that night, the panic had crystallized into something else, clarity. I sat at my kitchen counter with Alex, the soft glow of my laptop screen illuminating both of our faces. We didn't speak much. He was already typing away, navigating through secure databases, logging into credit bureaus, digging into anything with my name on it. Okay, he said finally, his voice low, eyes locked on the screen. We have a problem. A much bigger one. I stared at him. Defined bigger. Emma, he turned the laptop toward me. There are 3 credit cards opened in your name over the past 6 months. Each with a combined credit limit of about $70,000. All 3 are maxed out. I blinked, feeling the blood drain from my face. What? You didn't apply for any of these. I only have 1 card, my Amex from law school. That's it. Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. There's more. He clicked to another tab. A document opened, an unsecured personal loan. $50,000. Disbursed 4 months ago. I could barely find my voice. What? Who? A finance company based in Iowa, he said. They didn't even require physical presence. Just digital documents and a verified ID. Which they had. I gripped the counter to steady myself. And there's this. He pulled up another screen. An investment account in your name was used as collateral for a business loan. Not by you. There's no record of a business you own. I stumbled back from the counter. I don't own a business. I've never even tried. You don't need to, he said grimly. They just needed the paperwork. And his signature. Which they've clearly gotten very good at forging. I covered my mouth with one hand, trying to breathe. 7 months. 7 months I had gone to work, met with clients, paid bills, lived like everything was normal. 7 months while my financial life was silently being hijacked. Alex opened another tab. Your credit score. When's the last time you checked it? 6 months ago, I whispered. It was 812. He turned the screen. It's 613 now. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. My career, I said, my voice cracking. If Rothman and Lindley finds out about this, they'll open an internal review. If they suspect I'm involved in even one fraudulent transaction, I could be suspended. Disbarred. That's why we move now, Alex said, already flipping through a folder. We report identity theft. Immediately. I've contacted Nora, our firm's fraud specialist. She's agreed to help. But we'll need every single document. How much do you think they've taken? I asked, dreading the answer. Alex didn't speak right away. He pulled out a legal pad and began writing. Credit cards. Personal loan. Business loan. Collateral for my investment. Missed payments. Fees. Estimated damages. I pressed. $292,000, he said quietly. Maybe more, depending on what we find next. I sat down hard. Nearly $300,000. Gone. And I hadn't authorized a single dollar of it. My phone buzzed again. Madison. I let it ring out. What's our first step? I asked. Freeze your credit reports, Alex said. Contact the 3 bureaus. Then file fraud reports with every institution involved. I'll help you write them. I nodded slowly. Do you think this was planned? He looked at me. I think it was systematic. A chill ran through me. Mom borrowed my laptop last month. Twice. Said she needed to check her email. And Madison came to my office on my birthday and stayed late while I ran to grab lunch. Alex's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm checking your remote login history. A pause. Then he turned the screen. Here. Unauthorized login. Same day Madison was at your office. Logged in from your mom's home IP address. 2 hours later, someone accessed your investment account and downloaded financial statements. My stomach dropped. They didn't just use me, I whispered. They planned it. Alex looked at me. What do you want to do next? I didn't hesitate. Confront them. But not without proof. And not without backup. Alex nodded. We build the file. Then we hit them with everything. We worked through the night. By morning, we had compiled a dossier, dozens of documents, log files, emails, screenshots, statements. The proof was undeniable. Later that afternoon, I stood outside my parents' house, the same one I grew up in. Everything looked familiar. The garden Mom used to fuss over. The swing set Dad built for us. But it felt like walking into a crime scene. Madison was already inside, eyes swollen, sitting at the dining table. Dad was at the stove. Mom sat on the couch, flipping through a magazine like nothing had happened. "Emma, you're here," she said, plastering on a smile. I didn't respond. I walked to the table and placed the folder down. "Let's not pretend anymore," I said. "These are copies of every financial document opened under my name. Credit cards. Loans. Fraudulent investment activity. Signatures. IP addresses. All of it." Madison burst into tears. "You don't understand. I didn't mean to. I just needed help with the house, and then it snowballed." "You didn't mean to." I cut in, voice like glass. "You used my credit score to take out a $180,000 mortgage. You maxed out cards I never opened. You used my investment account for a fake loan. You call that an accident?" Dad finally turned around. "She just needed a start. And you, Emma, you already have everything. A career. Money. A reputation. Madison needed a chance. And stealing from me was the way to get it." I asked. Mom stood, stepping closer. "We're family. I know this was wrong, but I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd forgive us." I stepped back. "Forgiveness isn't on my to-do list today." Madison reached for me, sobbing. "I'll pay it back. I swear." I opened my phone and pulled up her latest credit card statement. "You spent $9,000 last month at a spa and on handbags. How exactly were you planning to repay this? Do you even have a job?" Silence. "I don't know," she admitted. I nodded. "Then I'm sorry. But you can't fix this with promises." Mom began crying. "Please don't do this. She'll lose the house." "She should," I said. "And maybe next time, she'll think twice before using someone else's life as a stepping stone." Dad's jaw clenched. "You're really going to ruin your own family over this?" I looked at him, my voice deadly calm. "You already ruined it. I'm just documenting the evidence." Madison choked on a sob. "I'm your sister. You're also the person who destroyed my financial future and risked my career," I said. "You don't get to betray me and then ask me to smile about it." I grabbed the folder. "This is going to the authorities tomorrow morning. I'm filing a formal fraud complaint with the state." Mom collapsed onto the couch, face in her hands. Dad said nothing. Madison just stared, terrified. I turned to leave, stopping at the doorway. "I'm not doing this out of revenge," I said. "I'm doing this because if I stay silent, there'll be a next time. And I won't let that happen. Not again." I stepped out into the cold air, leaving behind the only family I'd ever known. But in that moment, I realized something. Family doesn't mean they get to destroy you and call it love. Sometimes, the people who raise you are the very ones you have to rise against. The morning after confronting my family, I didn't sleep. Not really. I spent the night sprawled on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts a jumbled carousel of disbelief, rage, and numbness. I thought I'd already uncovered the full extent of what they had done: 3 credit cards, a mortgage, a personal loan, the forged insurance papers. Nearly $300,000 in fraudulent debt tethered to my name. That should have been enough to destroy someone. But it wasn't the end. Alex showed up early, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a grim expression. He didn't need to say a word, I could see it in his eyes. He knew something I didn't yet. "Solstice is ready," he said, setting down the coffee. "She's been digging into the financial data you sent over last night. She's got something. You need to see it." Solstice James was a senior financial fraud investigator, one of the most brilliant minds at Rothman and Lindley. She wasn't just sharp, she was relentless. If there was even a trace of irregularity buried in a transaction history, she'd find it. When we got to her office, she was already seated at her desk, glasses perched low on her nose, fingers flying over her keyboard. She didn't look up when we entered. Only when she finished typing did she lean back and swivel toward us. "Emma," she said, her tone serious. "We have a much bigger problem than you think." My heart plummeted. She turned her screen toward me. "I've been tracing your investment account, the one they used as collateral. There's a pattern of transactions connected to something called the Riverpine Growth Fund." I frowned. "I've never heard of that in my life." "Exactly," Solstice said. "It doesn't exist." She clicked through a series of windows, spreadsheet after spreadsheet filled with names, dates, bank transfers, notes in cryptic abbreviations. The deeper I looked, the more surreal it became. They set up an entire investment vehicle under your name. Used your credentials, your bar license, even a fake email address that mimics your real one. They told people you were the fund manager. I shook my head slowly. "That's impossible. I would have seen something." "They used a mirrored Gmail account," she interrupted, pulling up a screenshot. e.carter.conalt@gmail.com. One letter off from your real address. They copied your signature. Even mimicked your writing style. These email threads with investors? They look real. They look like you wrote them. I stared at the screen, horrified. One thread showed me advising someone to invest their retirement savings into the Riverpine Growth Fund, assuring them of stable returns supported by blue-chip holdings. I scrolled further and found attached documents, pitch decks, PDFs with graphs and logos, all branded with my name and a forged company seal. "They used this." I whispered. "They used everything," Solstice said. "Your LinkedIn profile. A headshot from your firm's website. Your law degree. They made it look airtight." My breath caught. "How much money are we talking?" She turned to another spreadsheet. "I've tracked at least $5.2 million in investments from private individuals, mostly older people, many of them retirees. The funds passed through multiple intermediary accounts. 2 domestic. 1 in the British Virgin Islands. 1 anonymous in Luxembourg." I reeled. "Oh my God. They used you, Emma," she said. "Not just as a financial shield, but as a lure. Your reputation. Your success. You weren't just the victim. You were the bait." I stood up and paced the room, trying to think, trying to breathe. Do any of these people know it's a scam? Not yet. Most of them are still waiting for their quarterly statements, she said. But they will find out. And when they do, they'll come looking for the person whose name was on the documents. Me. Alex stepped forward. "We need to notify the authorities." Solstice nodded. "Already did. I've prepared a package for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. We're also alerting the SEC." As if on cue, her office phone rang. She picked it up, listened for a few seconds, then handed it to me. "It's Helen Ward," she mouthed. "Your high school teacher." I froze. "Mrs. Ward. She used to sit next to my mom at PTA meetings. She'd brought cookies to our house when Madison had the flu in 8th grade. She'd helped me with my scholarship application for law school." I pressed the phone to my ear. "Mrs. Ward." "Hello, Emma," she said softly. Her voice cracked. Your mother told me you were managing a private fund. She said you were helping families invest." I gave her everything. My retirement. $78,000. I felt something inside me collapse. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "If I had known." "I trusted your mother," she said. "I trusted you." I shut my eyes, the weight of her words nearly unbearable. "I promise," I said. "I'll do everything I can to make this right." After the call, I sank into the chair, shell-shocked. "They scammed people who loved them," I said. "They used me to do it. They targeted people who trusted our family, our name." Alex's phone buzzed. He checked it and cursed under his breath. "That was a contact at Hallage Bank. Your father and another man just tried to withdraw $200,000 from a joint account flagged by Solstice's report. The system froze the transaction." "They're panicking," Solstice said. "If we wait, they'll move the rest offshore. Once it's gone, we may never recover it." "Then we move now," I said, standing. "We have everything. Let's bring this forward. To the banks. To the police. To the court if we have to. Solstice handed me a thick file. This is the complete documentation. Forged signatures. IP access logs. Email evidence. Transaction histories. Print it. Deliver it. Today. 2 hours later, we walked into Hallage Bank's downtown branch. The lobby was gleaming and calm, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. We were led to a private meeting room, where Frank Delaney, the branch manager, waited behind a sleek glass desk. "Emma," he said, standing. "I just met with your parents this morning. They claim you're spreading lies to ruin the family's name. They're threatening legal action." I didn't flinch. I placed the file in front of him. "Then you'd better look at this first." Frank opened the file and began to read. He started with indifference, but his expression quickly shifted, confusion, then alarm, then something closer to horror. This can't be real," he murmured, flipping faster now. "These transfers. This IP log. All of it originates from the Carter residence." Solstice nodded. "And the device ID matches a laptop Madison brought to Emma's office on her birthday. She accessed Emma's investment accounts, emails, and downloaded sensitive documents." Frank sat back, pale. "This is going straight to our legal department. We've also sent it to the police," Alex added. "And the FBI." Less than an hour later, 2 plainclothes officers entered the room, Inspector Hope and Deputy Morales. Both had reviewed the file already. "We'd like you to remain in the room, Miss Carter," Inspector Hope said. "We'll be bringing in your parents and sister for questioning." They agreed to meet under the assumption this was about loan paperwork. "They don't know yet." I nodded, numb. 10 minutes later, the door opened, and my family walked in. My mother smiled as if we were meeting for coffee. "Emma," she said. "Frank told us you had concerns. We thought it was best to clear things up as soon as possible." My father gave me a short nod. Madison wouldn't meet my eyes. I pushed the file across the table. "Then by all means, let's clear things up. You might want to start on page 3, where I outline how you used my identity to fabricate an entire investment fund and con over a dozen people." Madison paled. Mom's smile fell. My father's face went hard. "Emma," he growled, "what the hell do you think you're doing?" "I'm stopping you from ruining more lives," I said. "This isn't helping family. This is organized financial fraud. You'd put your own parents in jail." Mom snapped. "I'm not putting anyone anywhere," I said. "You did that yourselves." Then the officers stepped forward. "Gordon Carter. Helen Carter. Madison Carter," Inspector Hope said. "You are under arrest under a federal warrant for financial crimes, identity theft, and securities fraud." "No." Madison gasped. "I didn't know. I just helped send a few emails. I didn't know what they were." "You forged my resume," I said quietly. "You submitted a job application with my bar license number. You knew." As the officers led them out in cuffs, my mother turned back, eyes wild. "You'll regret this. Families don't do this to each other." I didn't reply. Because she was right. Families don't do this. But they did. And now, they were finally being held accountable. The silence in the courtroom was unlike any silence I had ever experienced before. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the presence of gravity, of consequence, of all the years and lies and forged papers collapsing into this single moment. Federal Courtroom 4 in downtown Chicago was packed. The air conditioning hummed overhead, trying but failing to cool the tension pressing down on every person in the room. I sat in the front row, fingers clenched around the edge of my seat, the thick folder of my testimony balanced on my lap. Across from me, seated at the defendant's table, were the 3 people I had spent most of my life believing I could trust without condition. My father, Gordon Carter, in a gray suit that looked 2 sizes too large now, his once imposing posture slumped into something brittle and exhausted. My mother, Helen Carter, with carefully styled hair and the remnants of a pearl necklace she wore to every church fundraiser. And Madison, my younger sister, once vibrant, now hollow-eyed, pale, her hands clasped tightly in her lap like a child praying not to be noticed. Judge Rebecca Roberts adjusted her glasses and looked over the rim toward the defense team. Her voice was sharp and calm, like the edge of a scalpel. "Before we proceed with witness testimony," she said, "let me remind both parties that this court has convened to address charges of financial fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, and the orchestration of an unlicensed securities operation under false pretenses. This is not a civil matter of family disagreement. This is a federal criminal trial. The words landed like stones. The defense attorneys nodded solemnly. Their opening statements had leaned heavily on emotion, describing a family under strain, a daughter doing well, and relatives who made desperate choices out of love. But then the prosecution stood. Assistant U.S. Attorney Carla Whitaker walked with unwavering purpose to the front of the courtroom, her heels quiet but deliberate. "We intend to prove that this was not desperation," she began. "This was design. This was not a moment of weakness, but a calculated, methodical, deeply rooted scheme. The defendants did not merely deceive their daughter, they built an entire financial illusion using her name, her education, her professional identity. They defrauded not only Emma Carter but over a dozen victims, most of them elderly, all of them trusting." She clicked a remote, and the courtroom's monitor displayed the first slide, an email thread between the fake e.carter.consult@gmail.com and Mrs. Helen Ward, my former teacher, the prosecution's first witness. When Helen Ward took the stand, the entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. She wore a beige coat and held her purse in her lap like a shield. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I invested $78,000, she said. Because Helen Carter, Emma's mother, and Madison Carter told me Emma was managing a fund for families. I saw Emma's name on the documents. Her photo. Her bar license. I never imagined it could be false." Her voice cracked at the end. "I wanted to stand, to walk over and hold her hand. But I couldn't move." The next witnesses were even harder to watch, an older couple who had lost their life savings. A retired engineer who sold his antique car to invest. A woman who took a second mortgage on her house. Each one said the same thing. They trusted Emma Carter. They trusted me. And I had never even spoken to them. When my name was called, I stood on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. I approached the witness stand, took the oath, and sat down. "My name is Emma Carter," I said, voice level. "I'm a corporate attorney at Rothman and Lindley. In the past year, I've discovered that my personal and professional identity was used to orchestrate a fraudulent investment scheme. I was unaware of the fund's existence. I did not authorize any use of my name, credentials, or accounts." I opened the folder and pulled out the first piece of evidence, a signature comparison. "This is my actual signature," I said. "And this is the forged signature submitted to Horizon First Bank for the Glenwood Drive mortgage. Notice the identical loop at the end of a detail copied from years of my legal paperwork." Slide after slide, page after page, I showed everything. Email headers traced to my parents' home IP. Security footage from the bank. A log of unauthorized access to my financial accounts. The job application Madison submitted using my law degree and credentials. When I finished, I looked across the courtroom. Madison was crying silently. My mother sat with her arms crossed, jaw tight. My father stared at the floor. The prosecution rested after showing the final slide, an Instagram post of my mother in a designer dress aboard a yacht, timestamped just days after one of the largest victim deposits hit the fake fund account. The defense tried to recover. They called character witnesses. They brought up family photos. They referenced holidays, church functions, school plays. But Judge Roberts wasn't swayed. She adjourned for the day and promised to deliver the verdict after reviewing the full case file. When the day of sentencing came, I arrived early. Not because I wanted to see it unfold, but because I needed closure. The judge entered, sat down, and opened the file with a kind of solemn reverence. Based on the evidence presented, she said slowly, and in light of the federal charges filed, the court hereby sentences Gordon Carter to 18 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 10 years. Helen Carter is sentenced to 15 years. Madison Carter, 12 years and permanent disqualification from practicing or managing financial affairs for others. Madison cried openly this time, head in her hands. My mother went pale. My father didn't flinch. All assets associated with the crimes are to be seized, the judge continued. This includes property, bank accounts, vehicles, jewelry, and investments. Victims will be repaid through restitution, pending asset liquidation. I exhaled slowly. Not out of joy, but because it was finally over. Or so I thought. In the days that followed, the media got wind of the trial. I received emails, some from strangers thanking me, others from victims who had stayed silent. People who said, "This happened to me, too." People who had been taken advantage of by family, by spouses, by children. I realized something then. My story wasn't unique. It was just finally told. A week later, Rothman and Lindley invited me to a meeting with the firm's board. I assumed it was about reinstating my caseload or updating my credentials. But it wasn't. "We want you to lead a new initiative," the managing partner said. "A program to help victims of financial betrayal, especially those harmed by family. It's called Reclaim and Rise. And we think you're the only person who can lead it." I stared at the table. Part of me wanted to say no. To disappear. To hide from everything this trial had exposed. But another part, the part that had stood in court and looked her parents in the eyes, knew better. I said yes. And that's when my real work began. We started small, a hotline, a website. Within days, hundreds reached out. People of all ages. Mostly women. Many over 60. Some too ashamed to speak above a whisper. They came with stories of betrayal and manipulation. A son who took out a reverse mortgage on his mother's home. A daughter who used her father's retirement to fund a startup. A husband who drained joint accounts and vanished. They weren't weak. They weren't stupid. They had trusted. And they had been used. At our first community gathering, I stood at the front of a small rented auditorium, the lights warm, the seats full. I had prepared a speech, carefully written and revised. But when I looked at their faces, some crying, some just quietly watching, I folded the paper. "I'm not here as a lawyer today," I said. "I'm here as someone who once believed family meant safety. Someone who thought that love meant forgiveness, even when forgiveness was used as a weapon." There was a hush. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us worst. And sometimes, the only way to heal is to walk away. In the front row, a woman in her 70s began to cry. That night, I stayed behind to collect the handwritten notes people had left behind, thank yous, confessions, raw pain spilled in ink. One note read. "I thought I was the only one. I thought maybe I deserved it. But tonight, I know I'm not alone." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something much bigger. The trial ended on a Tuesday. I remember because the following Wednesday felt like a void, a sudden collapse of all the noise that had been roaring in my life for months. For the first time in a long time, there were no lawyers to call, no new victims to identify, no meetings to attend or subpoenas to review. The weight of my family's betrayal had been lifted in the most public, brutal way imaginable. Yet what remained in its place wasn't relief, it was silence. People congratulated me. They said I was brave. Strong. That it must feel good to have won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like standing in the ashes of a house you used to call home, with no blueprint for what comes next. I didn't cry when the verdict was read. I didn't cry when they were taken away. But alone, in my apartment that night, I stared at the ceiling and whispered something I hadn't dared say aloud, "They're gone. And I'm still here." In the days that followed, I returned to work, though not as a full-time attorney. My role had shifted.